Hello and welcome to Mulch, with me, your host Rebecca Aning-Brown. This is a weekly podcast for flower farmers who want to build a confident flower farming practice that reflects the lifestyle that you want now and in the future. Each week I'll share conversation and tips to nurture and grow you and your flower farm. I'll open conversations that flower farmers find difficult to talk about, provide approaches that will help you to make decisions, chuckle at the idiosyncrasies of our work, and always be real and honest about my own work as a flower farmer. My goal is to help you to grow a curious, confident and grounded flower farming practice that flourishes as a business that you love and are proud to shout about. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and if you like what you hear, please do leave a review and share the podcast with your flower farming friends. It really does help to grow a confident and successful flower farming community. Hello and welcome back to Mulch. It's the holidays. It's October half term for us in Leeds. And we have escaped. So this is not where I would normally record. Normally I'm at my desk in our back room, surrounded by kind of wall posters and seeds and books and all sorts of other things. Behind the screen, there's a whole host of mess, which is allowed because that is my space to make messy. But today, I am in Low Hawksley, which is in Northumberland, a lovely little house. And if I look to my right, I can see the sea, and it is literally my favourite place to be. There haven't been a couple of episodes of Mulch for the past 2 weeks. That's mainly because I have been focusing on doubling down and doing the work with Gemma so that this week for me can be a true break. Now you might ask, if this is a true break, why am I doing an episode of Mulch? And that's because I love it and I miss it. And I know that some of you find it really useful and some of you find it really good to listen to whilst you work, to learn from and to help. And so for me, giving something back to a flower farming community that's offered me loads that is cost-free is really important. Okay, so it's the end of October, and today's topic is all about what I would do if I was going right back to the beginning as a new flower farmer at this time of the year. The reason that I'm doing this podcast is because behind the scenes, I've had a number of people asking me for advice. New flower farmers saying, this is where I'm at, what would you do? This is where I'm at, what would you do? And that's something that I find really difficult to respond to because I don't know your full situations, and I wouldn't expect you to share it on Instagram, and I certainly wouldn't be able to read everybody's full situation in that case anyway. So what I wanted to do isn't the same as what I would do with my mentees. With my mentees, we go through a full kind of background history and we look at absolutely every little bit of detail. But here on the podcast, I really wanted to be able to share my thoughts and my advice on what I would do if I was doing the podcast, and what I would do if I were starting my flower farm now. Because I think it's a real minefield, if I'm honest. I think it's a real minefield and it's difficult for people to know what to do. And I think there's so many options and there's so much advice out there. So yes, this is me adding my 2 pence to the bowl. But also this is me just saying, look, I'm really boring, sensible and pragmatic. And I also really, really, really want you to be successful. And success comes with confidence. And so these are the steps that I would take now to help me having a cracking season next year. They may not be what you would expect, but that's okay. It's advice. You can take it or leave it. The thing that I really should say, though, is that this is advice that I'm putting out there for new flower farmers. So if you're in your first season, you've just come to your end of your first year growing flowers, or if you're going into your first or second season and you've not really grown much other than a few things in your garden before. So my first tip is rest. Do what I'm doing now with my family. We've been out for a gorgeous walk today. We're going to have dinner, which is spaghetti carbonara, so nice and simple. We're going to play a board game. We're having lots of early nights and late mornings. Have a rest. Flower farming is really different from other small businesses. It's different because it is physical. Okay? It's physically demanding, it's mentally demanding, it's emotionally demanding, and it's draining. And the season, even when you're new and you're doing a shorter season, feels really long. The other thing is it's really expensive to set up well. It takes time to invest that kind of money. And so it really does become quite all-consuming. For me, my first piece of advice to you is to make sure that you rest now. So this kind of October to mid-January period, get as much rest in as you can. See family and friends, spend that time socialising, enjoy Christmas, and that you get your holidays or breaks planned in for next year. Okay, and I do mean the entirety of next year. And that's so that you can maintain a sense of freshness. So you've got things to look forward to when you're tired or you're having a difficult time, so that you've got time to rest your physical body. And I always find that the minute I step away from our flower farm, I'm even more enthusiastic about it than I am normally, which is actually quite hard. So stepping away really does, in and of itself, just massively rejuvenate and regenerate your energy to come back and keep doing what you're doing to the best of your ability. So that's top tip number 1, get some rest and plan some rest. My second tip is prepare the ground. Now, wherever you are doing your flower farming, decide on how much space you're going to cultivate, how much space you're going to grow on over the next 12 months, and stick to it. If you have already started growing, then review your space. Have a look at it. Work out what you'd like to change. Maybe you've been carrying heavy things too far. Maybe the things that need watering the most are furthest away from the watering, like your tap, so it's taking longer to do. The key thing when you're looking at your space is to make it as ergonomically, so physically good for your body, and kind of time efficient. And that gets easier the more you do, as you work out what grows at the same time as A and B, what needs the most water, the things that kind of are one and done that really don't need to be right by the gate, all those sorts of things. Have a look at your space. And whether you've been growing for a year or so or not, very much so, I would like you to consider point 2, which is specifically for our newer growers who've done nothing at all and are new in their spaces. Okay? What I really would advise you to do is to spend some time sitting in your growing space, doing nothing. I know. Spend some time sitting in your growing space, doing nothing. You're not actually doing nothing. You're observing, you're paying attention, and you're being patient. Okay? So when you're sat in that space, I want you to feel where the prevailing wind comes from. And go and do this at different times of the day. So I really want you to think about, where is the wind coming from? Is it coming from all directions, which is what it does in our field, which is a real nightmare? Or is it actually just coming from behind with a little bit coming from the right? Is it from the north? Is it from the south? Is it cold, or is it, filtered already? And I want you to look at the direction that that prevailing wind is coming from and work out whether you've got any shelter. Because if the answer is no, wherever your space is, it's actually really cheap to start dealing with that by creating a windbreak, a growing windbreak that you can cut from in the future, once it's nice and big and, sturdy. Creating that windbreak now over autumn winter is cheap. So bare root plants, no, they're not very big, but they grow really well and they grow really quickly. And this is the time to be thinking about buying them, because they are pounds, like £2 to £5 each, as opposed to £50, £60 for a fully grown tree, or hundreds of pounds even. So, you know, be sensible. Put in that windbreak as soon as you can from that direction. It won't cost you very much, and it will not be the most effective windbreak next year. But in 2 or 3 years' time, when you're off as a flower farmer, it will serve you so well. And it's the one thing that I didn't do and I wish I had done. And the reason I didn't do it is because whilst I trusted our farmer, it wasn't my space. And I didn't know whether I would still be there in 3, 5, 7, 10 years' time. I really wish that I had done that earlier on. You'll live and learn. You have the chance to learn from my mistakes. The other thing that I really want you to pay attention to is the sun. So where does it rise? Where does it set? Where are the shady bits in your field or your growing space? Where are the sunny bits? Walk around your space. Where is the soil dry and hard? Where is it boggy? In every space, it will change as you move across. And so you really need to pay attention to that. And the more you know about that now, the better, because it will advise you next year, the year after, on what to plant where. So you're not just sitting in your field. You're not just sitting there. You are sitting and learning. You're observing. You're being patient, but also using those skills of observation of nature, to really make the most of the space that you have. And once you've done some sitting, set out your beds and your paths. Okay, my top tips. This is a kind of bit of bonus, really. My top tips for setting out beds are, number one, less is more, especially earlier on. You want to make sure that you're learning at a sensible scale so you can keep on top of your learnings, so that when you decide that you're going to scale up, you know what works for you in your space. The more you try and do in that space early on, the harder it is to learn from, the harder it is to work out what's gone well, what's gone badly, because you've just got to keep going and keep on top of everything. And that, for me, is another thing that I wish I hadn't done. I grew too much too early, and it was harder for me to learn what was going on, and I actually scaled back before we've really ramped up now. Okay, second thing, make sure you can reach the middle of your beds. I'm really short, so my beds are no wider than 90 centimetres. A metre? Too wide. 90 centimetres is where everything is. You need to be able to reach the middle from both sides. My third tip for setting up your beds is more of a word of caution. So raised beds look gorgeous. Gorgeous in the garden. And they do have their uses, which is a topic for another podcast. But I'd say they look beautiful, but they harbour pests, and they're often quite square, which makes it difficult to cultivate the middle of the space. So, a word of caution, think about them carefully if you're going to install them. We have a few. We're steadily removing all of the raised beds that we put in when we started, because they are more work. They're more work, they don't actually make my life easier. That's my personal learning as well. Alright, so we've had windbreak, we've had sunshine, and what else have we had? We have had lay out your beds, pay attention, buy some bare root trees, all those sorts of things. Number 4, plant a handful, just a handful of spring bulbs that will bring you joy next year when you're working in your field. So the purpose of the bulbs that you're planting now is not for wholesale use. It is not so that you can do endless bouquets in March, because bulbs are a really big investment. Firstly, you want to be putting them in a place where they're not going to hinder you or use your best prime spot, which is what people do. You go in, you're really excited, you get to that first bit of space and you fill it with bulbs. Once they're there. But then you realise that dahlia are really heavy, and so you want them closer to your gates than you want your bulbs that you're going to use in spring, and then not for the rest of the year. Okay? So just bear that in mind. Buy a handful of bulbs so that you can enjoy them as a bit of pretty something next spring whilst you're working. And then next year and the year after, and so on and so forth, invest year on year in something bulby for springtime. Okay, so you may have noticed that the one thing that I haven't said yet is sow lots of hardy annuals. Sow lots of seeds. I haven't said that. Look, this is advice, or my advice for newer growers, and it is my heartfelt belief and experience and observation that autumn sowing is unpredictable, it's hard work, it's time consuming, and it's stressful. Getting plants through the winter, through our winters, is stressful. And this advice is here with the intention of you starting the season next year with confidence and enthusiasm. And when you've struggled to get stuff through the winter, that really isn't a fun place to be in March, April. So I really want you to enjoy the year, and hardy annual sowing, as far as I can work out, in my experience, and also, I guess more importantly, to give you breadth and the experience of experienced growers. That's terrible English. Having spoken to experienced growers, having worked with experienced growers, they say the same thing. It's hard work, and it requires significant investment in terms of protection and those sorts of things, which I don't want you to be making at this stage, so that you're buying the right things for your space at the right time. Okay, so hold back. I know that's what's all over Instagram at the moment. I know. And yes, I have done an autumn sowing, and yes, we are getting that in the field. But the comparison is not fair. Okay, we are 5, 6, 7 years in. Years 1 or 2, it's hard work, and for limited gain, if I'm honest. So the limited gain is 2 or 3 weeks at the beginning of the season. So yes, you do get flowers earlier, but the investment to be able to achieve that is actually really big. And so I guess I'm just trying to conserve your funds so that you can choose where to spend them in the future, rather than realising halfway through the winter that you'll need to spend more money on plastic, more money on PPX, more money on environment and all those sorts of things. Conserve your funds and use them wisely once the season starts properly. Okay. What would I not do? Well, thing number 1, I wouldn't sow lots of seedlings. There you go. You can take that. And I'm going to share it from here. Number 2, I would not buy hundreds of thousands of seeds. I know, it's tempting. The catalogues have all arrived, and you are being bombarded day after day, week after week, by all of those major providers of seeds that I can't mention because we're not sponsoring them, okay? I just wouldn't recommend buying every flower in every colour for every seed type and variety. I'm getting excited by that. Don't do it. I have done it, and I have made that mistake, and I had tons and tons and tons of seeds that I couldn't use, and therefore I wasted tons of money. So I was talking about all of that kind of seed buying, and the reason it's important is because flower farming is exciting. Flowers are exciting. Flower catalogues are exciting, but they're exciting for a reason. They are designed to make us spend money. But you can only grow a handful of things at a time, especially when you're new. Okay? You can only grow a handful of things well, and then you can grow a handful of things badly. And it's probably the things that you grow badly that you're going to learn the most from. But there's only so many of those that you can learn about at a time as well. I have a friend who's a grower in the south, and whilst I love records, she's made a really clear decision this year to keep records on 3 or 4 of her plants through the season, because she's finding it difficult to keep an eye on everything. Really sensible thing to do. Next season she's going to keep an eye on 3 or 4 more, and so on and so forth. You have to pick what works for you. But if the aim of your first season is to gain confidence and to learn from your mistakes, and gain experience, then the less you're learning from it in one go, unless you have a massive team already, the better, because then you can really maximise the learning from it and move it forward to better success in the future. Don't buy every seed in the catalogue. It is hard. All right, so my final piece of advice is about Instagram. I suggest that you follow 3 or 4 flower farmers who have different styles, different growing methods, a different approach. I strongly suggest that you don't try to follow all the flower farmers in the world, because yes, you will learn some things. But the experience of others, and particularly myself, because this is my podcast, is that the more flower farmers that you're paying close attention to, the harder it is to feel good about your practice, your intentions and your purpose. And it can make you quite unwell. It can really demoralise you when you say, oh, such and such is doing this, I'm not doing it yet, help! It's not helpful. Pick 3 or 4 that you admire, or that you're interested in their practice, or that are just really different, so that you're observing different processes. And notice their processes. Okay, notice them. Don't make detailed notes or try and save every post that they do. Just notice it, because this is about learning. This is about observation. And if it comes back to you as you're working, oh, such and such did this, I'm going to give it a go. Finally, the most useful skills that I have brought from my previous careers to my career as a flower farmer are observation, patience, and a willingness to test and fail in order to improve. All of this is recorded. So all of this is recorded so that I can come back to it, so I don't have to hold it all in my brain. So there's one purchase that I would encourage you to make, and that is a purchase that will allow you to record all of your learning, all the steps that you're taking, all of your actions, all of your successes and failures, and that is the Flower Farmers Planner. Now, I wrote the Flower Farmers Planner. I wrote the Flower Farmers Planner in our 3rd year of flower farming practice, because it's the thing that I wish I'd had 2 years before. It's a thing that would have helped me to understand where we were going right, going wrong. That's terrible English. But it is that thing. I had bits here, bits there, bits here, bits there. It was incredibly hard. And so, what I really, 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 really encourage you to do is to make records. And I'd suggest that you do it in the Flower Farmers Planner, because it's designed by a flower farmer for a flower farmer. There's a link to pre-order that in the show notes, and if you don't see the show notes, you can go straight to our website, which is www.silvergreyfoliage.com. You can order it there. Alright, so that is me for today. Welcome to what has actually been a really glorious day in October in Northumberland. The sun has been out, the skies have been clear. Yesterday it was a bit stormy, but it's not so today. I will be back next week with another episode of Mulch. I'll be talking about flower farming in practice. I'll speak to you then. Rebecca. Thank you for listening to Mulch. I hope that you found it useful. To find the show notes, head back to our website, where you'll find links to all the things that I've been talking about in today's episode. If you're on Instagram, you can find us at Silver Grey Foliage. I would appreciate it so much if you were able to share this episode in your Instagram stories. And if you were able to leave a review, it really will help more people to get on your road. I'll be back with you